not gonna work, you know?
I caught just a
and
glimpse on the news
So,
yesterday.
really, when you started? Yeah. When you started trying to buy it, I was like, look, what are we doing?
It's busy with all of this noise about the market.
Katie's never texted me, so we're not ready. I mean,
20% in the end of the year. Turn my phone
Hey.
off today.
okay, I never got a text. I'll let, it just now came. I'll let the chairman know. Thanks. Mr. Chairman, we're ready to go.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Leak. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everyone to the September 8th meeting of the City County Planning Board. Would you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a kid at heart. Welcome.
Our first order of business today will be the consent agenda. These are items for which the petitioner is requesting withdrawal or continuance, or items for which staff has recommended approval and no one has signed up to speak in opposition. For all public hearings, each side will have a total of 12 minutes. There will be no rebuttal period. Once the public hearing is closed and the board goes into work session, no one is permitted to speak unless a planning board member asks them a question. For general use district zoning requests, the planning board must consider the full range of uses allowed in the zoning district being requested. The petitioner may not refer to a specific use for the property. For special use district zoning requests, however, the petitioner must identify the intended use or uses of the site and give specific details on how the site will be developed. Items under Section B of the agenda will require final approval by the appropriate elected body, either the city council or county commissioners. As such, votes taken today by the planning board concerning these items are recommendations that will be considered by the elected bodies during their review of the requests. Before addressing the planning board, we will need your name, address, and zip code for the record. Our first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the August 11th and August 25th meetings. Are there any additions or corrections? If none, is there a motion?
Move approval. Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any further discussion? All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye, that is, and opposes? That is unanimous, thank you. I'm now going to call on Mr. David Reed to review the consent agenda for today.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we have two automatic continuances. They are items B6 and B8. So they will go on to the October meeting. Our first consent item, let's see, is item B1. To the slideshow again. This is case number W3539. The petitioner is the city of Winston-Salem, and it's a site plan amendment for a GIS zone property. It's approximately 231 acres. It's located at the southwestern terminus of Recycle Way. This is a graphic that was provided by the Utilities Commission. It's showing the landfill area, and at the bottom in the green pattern line is where they are proposing to put in an MSE berm, which is, MSE stands for Mechanically Stabilized Earthen Berm. By putting this berm in, this area of the landfill will be able to take additional fill. It's already been filled in this area, and the berm will allow them to put more fill on the sides, but not go any higher. And it also won't bring the cell any closer to the property lines. By having this berm in there and being able to put this additional fill in, they'll get about 7 more years of life in the landfill. So this is the detailed site plan showing the boundaries. And again, this area already has been used for fill, and the boundary on the southern end, which is the right side of this map, will virtually not be any closer to the property line than it is now. And again, the top of the fill will not go any higher. So staff does recommend approval of this site plan amendment to add the MSE wall, and be happy to try and answer any of your questions.
Are there any questions for staff?
Yeah, Mr. Reed, as mentioned in the notes, Legacy looked at the possibility of this being finished with use and beginning to be turned into other things in 2023. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would probably call on utilities staff to
Yep,
come up to
just to look
talk
at that.
about specific dates and stuff.
So this will extend the life for 7 more years. I was trying to figure out 7 more years past when.
Well, the date that you have, where is that from?
It was somewhere in your notes.
In preparing for the consent agenda, my understanding is that it was going to go to 2034, the landfill.
As a longest date,
No, and this would take it out to 2041.
2041.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if we put in something from an area plan when we had different figures in the past. I'm not sure.
And again, I believe it's one of those things that, and again, if we need to, we can hear from Jan, who is over the landfill, or perhaps one of her staff members. It's one of those things that, whenever the landfill was originally approved at this location in the late 90s, there was an anticipated date when the landfill would be closed, and through stream diversion of recyclables, more efficient use of space, et cetera, the life of the landfill has continued to, get pushed further out. Like I said, I want to say the early 2020s was what it was originally anticipated to be, and then over time, through that stream diversion of materials, it's gotten pushed to 2034. What this would do is push to 2041, the anticipated date whenever the last cell would be closed up here, which again gives city county utilities, the city, the county, time to identify another location, or, again, perhaps a future expansion in this area, but, maybe not where it was originally anticipated. And again, all those kind of things are further down the road. But to answer your immediate question, I believe it's through diversion of materials to other recycling and those kind of things that's pushed that date out. And then this, again, will allow more efficient use of the space by putting this wall in, coming back in and filling around that wall. But again, not raising the height any more than what was originally proposed.
Yeah, what I was reading was it will remain open until 2021 and possibly as late as 2023, as 2030, which was in your notes there. So it was even sooner than I thought. So is this being brought in by the city or by the Utilities Commission?
Well, and again, I would have to let them probably speak to that. I mean, in other words, I believe that the city probably owns the property, but it's operated by city county utilities, so it's a city county utility function that they're doing. But I think the fee simple ownership of the property is by the city, which is why thus the city is the petitioner.
Okay, so the city's petitioner. Okay, got it. Well, I had a wonderful tour of the landfill today as I was doing my due diligence,
and looked at it from over in the neighborhood and couldn't see it from the neighborhood as well. And so I was very satisfied about it, but I'm very concerned that if it was supposed to remain open by 2021, that we're not hearing some comments of, well, we've got a great new spot that we're ready to do in another 14 years or whatever. But we need that.
Any additional questions? All right, thank you. No one has signed up. Is anyone here opposed to this request? Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the planning board find that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those? Yes.
This case came about 6 months before I got onto the planning board. And that was, I know that Nettlebrook and Murray and all those neighborhoods around there, that was a big deal. And it's just something to extend it for 20 years or 15 years beyond what its original intent was. So it's my only comment. I just made a motion to approve it.
Yep. All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
We do need the second
Second
motion.
motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, I further move that the planning board recommend approval of W 3539.
Have a motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
Okay, the next consent item is item B3, and this petitioner is also the city of Winston-Salem in this case. It's rezoning to go from former Forsyth County LIS zoning for property that was annexed into the city and adopt zoning within the city, so it would become Winston-Salem LIS zoning. The site is approximately 2.98 acres, and it's on the west side of Millennium Drive, west of Temple School Road. You might recognize this site that came before you last month. This was a final development plan for a property northeast of the piece we're talking about right now. The piece we're talking about now is in the lower left corner in kind of a light yellow color. This was zoned in the county to be a part of this industrial park. And it was always had a portion of a site plan on the land. But because it was in the county, it was always a separate zoning docket. Now it's been annexed into the city. The site recently approved for these two large buildings included this property, so we got to review the redesign of this area by Winston-Salem standards. And we recommend approval of this conversion zoning from county to city with the site plan that was approved last month, being the site plan that goes forward with the case. So I'd be happy to try and answer any questions you have.
Yes.
Now, we had a long discussion about, there were slightly different controls when it's city land versus county land. So this puts those controls into place.
Right, we reviewed this portion, knowing it was coming this month. When we looked at the plan last month, we reviewed it by city standards. So it's a site plan ready to go, meeting city standards.
Excellent. Okay.
Any other questions for staff? All right, no one has signed up. Is anyone here opposed to this request? Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the planning board find that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
I have a motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any further discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
And Mr. Chairman, I further move that the planning board recommend approval of W 3543.
A motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
Okay, the next consent item is item B4, W3544. Petitioner is Hatcher Associates Incorporated. It's a rezoning request from RS9 to NBS, Neighborhood Business Special Use. Site is approximately 0.98 acres. And it's on the north side of Old Hollow Road, west of Germantown Road. On this location map, you see in purple what was earlier thought of to be the ultimate right-of-way for the Northern Beltway. Northern Beltway interchange is at the top, the large purple area, and they assumed early on that the widening of Old Hollow and NC8 around this intersection would probably cover that area. Since that time, they've developed a large roundabout at that intersection, and that roundabout took up additional right-of-way, and now the NC8 right-of-way abuts this property. The area in yellow, the eastern side of it, is the edge of the right-of-way. And you can see the northeast corner of it is clipped off, and the southeast corner of it is clipped off for the right-of-way. The area plan recognized that the small parcel on the corner of that intersection could potentially go commercial. Well, now this is the corner parcel because the right-of-way moved. So I will move over to the site plan. They're reusing the existing house. It's very low-intensity reuse of the property. The NBS uses are just single-family, services A, and offices. That's the only uses they're asking for. And they've also relocated their driveway as far west as possible to get it away from the existing roundabout without getting into the required buffer yard on the west side. So we are supportive of this, and planning staff would recommend approval of this special use zoning.
Are there any questions for staff in this matter?
I don't mean to hog all the questioning time, but I do have questions about some of these. So the property that's immediately next to this in our interchange plan and that we looked at with this, is that expected to go commercial as well up to the little side road there?
Right, we expected, as we looked at this, that possibly there's about 3 more houses west that might have similar conversion requests. And
Wait a minute, there's a little side road, though, I think one property over. Would
Yeah, it's
that be the end of that?
yeah, it's actually a little
White
bit
Oaks?
further. Little further.
Oh, I
over.
see, so they have more lots in
Yeah,
there.
and of
Okay.
course, across the street is a used car lot in front of some of those
Right.
lots. But yeah, we would expect those to come in for similar low-intensity conversions, keeping sort of the residential character,
Okay.
reusing the houses for offices or services A or something.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? All right, no one has signed up in opposition. Is anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the planning board find that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I further move that the planning board recommend approval of W 3544.
I have a motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
All right, the next consent item is item B5, zoning docket W 3545, and it's the petitioners are Co-Revocable Living Trust, Betty Co. and Steve Co. Rezoning request from RS9 to HBS on approximately 0.57 acres. It's located on the west side of University Parkway across from Carfair Drive. You might remember just south of here, recently a car wash was approved, and they are now grading that property. The 2 structures on that property south of here are now gone, as well as the house on this property has now been removed. This request, move on to the site plan, is for an oil change. The area plan does recommend this for commercial use, and when we initially looked at this, there was proposed to be a connection to the car wash from the oil change facility. That is now turned into a turnaround area without a connection. That came from NCDOT, who controls University Parkway. They cannot extend the median that you see in the bottom of the plan there on University in the bottom right corner of the plan because they can't block Carfair Drive, which is a public road. And they were concerned about traffic maybe using the entrance to this to get back to the car wash and backing up traffic on University. So they denied the request to connect these 2 sites. This plan does meet the requirements of the ordinance, and staff does recommend approval of the zoning. So I'll try and answer any questions you have.
Any questions from,
So this area's already been graded, is that correct? And I think I saw a retaining wall in the back, it's already been graded.
The site to the south certainly has, and I know the house has been removed from this site. Mark, you were out there. Did you see grading on this particular lot?
If it did, it had already had grass and everything grown up, so, but
Maybe
possible.
You might have been
It's
looking at the site to the south. There's a lot of grading on the car wash site that's already.
Oh, so that was the car wash site? You know, you can't tell exactly where those signs are that you put up. Okay, okay.
Any additional questions for staff? All right, no one has signed up in opposition. Is anyone here opposed to this matter? Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the planning board find that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
I have a motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose the same sign. That is unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I further move that the planning board recommend approval of W 3545.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous.
Okay, the rest of the consent items are non-public hearing items. And the first one is a subdivision. Subdivision is item C1. It's subdivision 2022-099 Adams Estates. It's a 12-lot subdivision in agricultural zoning district on approximately 16.74 acres. And it's on the south side of Williams Road between Double Springs Road and Credence Farm Road, which is way out on the western end of the county. The site plan shows one road with a stubbing to the south, which is the right side of the map, with a fire department approved turnaround at the end of the street. These lots are all larger than required for AG zoning, and there's actually a pond nearby which satisfied the fire department for their firefighting needs. They can go to that pond and get water if they ever have to fight a fire out here. So this meets the requirements of the ordinance, and staff recommends approval.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye. Aye. That is unanimous.
Next consent item is item C2. It's another subdivision, 2022-100 Salem Brook subdivision. It's a 26-lot subdivision in RS9 zoning on 13.55 acres. It's on the north side of Fry Bridge Road across from Nestleway Drive. And the site plan shows that this subdivision connects to two existing roads at the north and the northeast side of the site. It also has a stub street to the west in case the property to the west is ever redeveloped. That street can be extended. This is a straight subdivision. It's not a PRD. There's no required open space, but they have one very large lot that they're going to turn over to the homeowners association as common area. This meets the requirements of the ordinance, and staff recommends approval.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
Motion by Mr. Lamb.
Second.
Second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That is unanimous.
Consent item is D1, PBR 2022-13. It's a development called Ivy Court. It's a 40-unit multifamily townhouse development in the E zoning district on 2.71 acres. It's on the east side of Ivy Avenue, north of East 10th Street. And then the site plan shows the townhouses. These townhouses will have to have entrances on Ivy, which is a requirement of the GMA2 standards. They'll also have entrances from the back where the parking lot is. One big benefit to this development that when they started looking at it, we weren't aware of, is that the 1.2 mile extension of Long Branch Trail has been funded and will run along the east side of this site. You see the railroad tracks back there. That Long Branch Trail is now been funded and will run along there, and there will probably be access from Ivy, possibly through what looks like an old rail spur on the left side of this plan or the north side of the site. So this also has two entrances, which makes the fire department very happy. And staff, it meets the requirements of the ordinance, and staff recommends approval.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
Second.
Have a motion
Can I
by yes.
Question. This is an E district. It used to be an industrial area. We've had long discussions about chemical processing and whatnot. Are there any dangerous industries that remain in this sector, even though we've call it E. It certainly gives me pause, and of course, I always hate when we give up industrial land, but, this is close to the city center, and I understand that, but do we know of any dangerous chemical processing places that are near where we're wanting to put multifamily? And you're on the record.
George, I think they have to have a phase one to get through any permitting, and
What does that mean?
phase one is an environmental study.
No, I'm not talking about the plot itself. I'm talking about any adjacent industries that remain there from the previous, because there are a number of remaining, if you know Industry Hill at all, there are a number of places that remain in there. And what I'm asking is there any chemical manufacturing or any potential dangers to people that we would be putting into danger as we do these mixed zoning places?
Obviously, it's hard to answer the question, are there any potential dangers, because there could be a lot of things out there that we don't know of. As far as any known chemical manufacturing establishments still in that area, I'm not aware of any. Most of those buildings out there over their most recent history have been, if nothing more than storage, a little more than storage. But again, I can't say definitively that there's not, obviously there are inherent dangers anywhere, but I'm not aware of any existing ongoing manufacturing in that vicinity.
I just, we've had a tendency over the past, 5 or 6 years to do more mixed development in terms of mixing it with light industrial or, other types, which on the surface of it's really good. And of course, the community led us in that direction. It wasn't the planning board leading us in that direction. But I am concerned that as we do this, that staff spend some time looking at the area to be sure that the safety items are in place and report that to the board as we make our decisions on this. So I hope that can be incorporated as we do more residential with other forms of industry. Thank you.
Can I just follow up on that a little bit? I think it's good to want to know what's around you. From our responsibility in planning, I think to say we are or are not going to approve because of XYZ industry within QRP distance, we are following to a very dangerous mindset, I think, with that. I think that we have to look at the developers of the property, the owners. If they're putting residential in, they will have done their due diligence, not only just for what's on the property itself, that extends to a distance. And at some point, we're going to have to, short of major overhaul in the rules, say it is their judgment that they can have a residential facility building here, and people will come there, want to live there. Like on this site, I guess that's still an active railway, isn't it?
Yep.
I think I've seen.
I believe it's
stuff on that.
that line in and of itself is not. There is a line that comes into downtown that goes further to the west. As it bends to the
on
east,
that
it's not, which is why this is available for the Long Branch Trail, kind of rails to trails. But this line currently is not active. But again, Norfolk Southern also is not giving it away. Yeah.
And this is the job of urban infill, right? We're going to see more of this, and if we stop this type of development, we'll never reach any density, even if it's smaller, like density for our urban market. So, and the phase one will actually touch and seep through from surrounding areas, so you have to protect those residents. Like, it's a plot of land, and you don't want anything seeping into townhomes that you're selling. So I don't think we should be concerned here, George.
Well, and again, just to kind of build on that a little bit, again, if this were a kind of a discretionary approval kind of thing where they were coming in and asking to rezone the property, I think that's certainly something that could be looked at as part of the board and the elected bodies purview. Again, since this property had previously been rezoned from an industrial use to E several years ago, what's before the board today is a planning board review item to ensure compliance with the provisions of the ordinance. And it does give the planning board the ability to impose some conditions related to very specific things. I don't have that list in front of me right now, but again, I definitely hear you, and I think it can be something that, that can be brought up as a valid concern. But the issue in this particular case is the fact that it has previously been rezoned, and we're really making sure that it complies with UDO requirements, and if there are any other reasonable conditions that can be imposed to ensure compatibility, safety, buffering, those kind of things can be added. But the land use decision to rezone was made several years ago.
And I would just add, if it'll enable anyone to sleep more easily tonight, don't forget the conservative nature of the lending community that is not going to put its money into a site that it can later be held liable for, not with any knowledge anyway.
George, one thing I remembered was that the Haynes site on Stratford Road was redeveloped and that plant was torn down.
Yeah.
They originally proposed a residential element, and then they later found out that they couldn't put it there, so there was some checks and balances that occur. So.
It's just something I think that's been brought to the city's attention, and we need to be aware of when we're making decisions in terms of safety. Yeah, thank you.
Duly noted.
Any other comments or questions? All right. What's the pleasure of the board?
There's a motion.
Is there already a motion on the floor? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
We had a second, all right. All those opposed, same sign. That is unanimous.
Okay, the last consent item is item D2, PBR 2022-14, and this is the Kingswood School relocation. The use is school public in IP zoning district on approximately 9.41 acres, and it's on the west side of Mercantile Drive, south of Museum Drive. And this school is a collaboration between the school system and the Cross Nora Communities for Children, which is now located in the children's home, what we all know as the children's home property. So this is the site plan. All schools come through planning board review. This particular site is completely developed and is being taken over as is. The building stays the same, the parking stays the same. There are a few questions by interdepartmental staff about the width of the driveways and the distance to fire hydrants. Those have all been resolved, and the site plan is as is. So we do recommend approval of this PBR.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion, is there a second? Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs.
As the one that helped found Kingswood School with Don Martin, is the name Kingswood going to be carried over to this property as well? Or do you know,
Well,
or is there a
that's-
representative of the school here?
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone here representing them, but that's the name they put on their site plan.
Okay, because that was a
Kingswood
good
School
Methodist
relocation.
name that we used at the children's home to name the school when we founded it. Okay.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
All right, well, Mr. Wilson will present the first public hearing case.
Mr. Chairman and Board, if I could, as Brian is coming up to present case B2, I did want to just make sure that folks understand, again, basically whenever you're going over the rules of procedure at the beginning of the meeting, items under section B generally require a action by the elected body. That is not the case for item B7. B7 is a final development plan that the rezoning was previously approved by City Council. If the planning board approves that item today, you will be approving it, not recommending approval. I just want to make sure that I said that for the record before we get to that item.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is zoning docket W3540. Petitioners are Vest Mill Property Owner LLC, Myra Mize, Valley Meyer Show Family Trust, Elizabeth Burke, and Alan Stewart. It's approximately 15.71 acre site located on the north and south sides of Vest Mill Road at its western terminus. The petitioner is requesting a special use rezoning from RS9 and RM12S to RM12S. See on the Legacy Growth Management Plan map, this is in Growth Management Area 2, urban neighborhoods. This is the location map. You can see the existing RM12S zoning district here that was recently approved, I believe, this year in March. The petitioner is asking essentially to add this RS9 zone portion here to the east. You can see that, take my mouse pointer over here. You can see that over here on the right and that strip of land there. Mouse back here. And this is the aerial image. Again, you can see most of the property is largely undeveloped and wooded. There are two existing single-family residences that will be demolished as a part of the development. You can see, you may not be able to see it on this, but there is an existing single-family home here that's off-site from the property. Let me get my mouse pointer over here. That has an existing access easement that goes through that strip there for its access, and that vacant lot that's off-site as well as have its access through that area. This is looking east along Vest Mill Road, again at the end of that strip of land to the north. The drive, that's the gravel drive there that I was mentioning. This is looking west along Vest Mill Road. Side is again to the left, and then further down Vest Mill Road. And this is looking towards the side across Vest Mill Road into that strip of property. This is on the other side of the development, looking north along Westbrook Drive. Side is to the left. The proposed continuance of Vest Mill Road is approximately where the city vehicle is there. That's where they're proposing the intersection there with Westbrook. And this is looking south along Westbrook. You can see it terminates there at the end. This is the Southwest Suburban Area Plan Land Use Recommendation Map. You can see that it does continue to recommend office uses for the RS9 portion along with the existing RM12S. As mentioned in the previous rezoning case, while the area plan's land use recommendation is for office uses at this location, both Legacy 2030 and the area plan provide general recommendations for integrating a mix of land use types within redevelopment areas. This site is an area that has undergone a significant amount of commercial redevelopment. And in addition, the demand and a reduction for office park development combined with the ongoing housing crisis warrants a reevaluation of the specific area plan recommendation in the immediate vicinity. This is the proposed site plan. It's actually from the rest of the site perspective on the western side of Vest Mill, there's not a significant change. They are adding 2 additional buildings, and it would be a net increase in 40 units. Again, it's a net increase in 2.5 acres. They're also proposing to realign Vest Mill with Westbrook to kind of create a better alignment there, a 90-degree intersection, and formalize that intersection there where they're continuing that through. The other change on this site plan would be they're proposing a private lift station for the sewer. I'm not sure if you can see that in this plan. I'll kind of point it out. It's right there next to the common open space. So they're proposing private sewer internal to the site, and then that will be pumped up all the way to Vest Mill where it can join with public gravity sewer. Another thing to point out, again, just for your reference, that's the existing RS9 portion. That's the approximate area of that. They are proposing a additional 30-foot buffer yard. So it's an extra width, but with type 2 plantings along the eastern portion. They'll be continuing that buffer yard to the rear of these garage units here and behind the parking area there. The rest of this area is going to remain undeveloped other than, of course, the force main and the private easement, and with the existing tree stand to remain. And these are the proposed elevations. This is the elevation for the 2 buildings closest to the exit and the one additional at the northwestern corner. These are the 4 buildings along that proposed Vest Mill extension. So those are the, again, 3-story buildings. This is the building 3 that's closest to the RS9, so it's 2-story to kind of step back the building massing. And then these are the garage units with similar architectural detailing. Just as a reminder, I know there'll probably be some discussion about the extension of Best Mills at 3rd Street. That was, again, already approved, that extension and as a 3rd Street was already approved in the previous rezoning. But staff is actually bound by the UDO in requiring that extension. As you can kind of see, I've kind of outlined it for you, but all multifamily residential buildings really need to have an orderly public street network for proper development, and they're not actually supposed to block that development. Streets used as 3 streets or connector streets should be public so that there can be adequate public maintenance, and they're built to that public street standard. Public streets are necessary to provide adequate service delivery in the immediate area, especially here when you have a geographically constrained area where, just for instance, a wreck or something like that were to happen in an intersection so that fire or emergency services could get there in time. In conclusion, staff found that the proposed rezoning is in keeping with the larger goals of Legacy 2030. The proposal will provide appropriately scaled multifamily units in a transitional area with a diverse array of land uses. And the proposed plan does show excellent multimodal interconnectivity. Just one final point, staff recognizes the need for further improvements on Westbrook Drive offsite from this. It's staff's understanding that some commitments have been made by council member for this award, Councilmember Monday, to improve Westbrook Drive once completion on the proposed site has been completed. With that, staff does recommend approval of this rezoning request, and the site plan does meet UDO requirements. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Wilson, go over that last part again. You think there's movement already by council to upgrade Westbrook?
Yes, well, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, at the council meeting where the original rezoning was approved back in spring of 2022, I believe that date's right. The council member for the ward basically said that he would commit to use some of his resurfacing money for his ward to improve those streets, but that he wasn't going to commit to what year because it really depended on when they started construction and that kind of thing. But he did make a commitment to that, and he has had Jeff Fanzer with Winston-Salem DOT out there to take a look at it, to give an assessment of the condition. And again, I think if you've been out there, you can see it's not in good condition at all. So, as this project, gets under construction and as they are, looking to make those tie-ins, it's my understanding, again, there's no specific condition of approval related to it, but that he has made a commitment that he will ensure that road is brought up to adequate standard. In other words, it's not going to be curb and gutter, but essentially it would be resurfaced to make sure it has the proper subgrade and those kind of things.
Well, I've got to agree with the letters that we received. I had to go out there again and take a look at it. It must not be 12, 15 feet across, bad surface, 2 cars can't pass. It's an embarrassment to call it a city road. I'm sort of surprised, but so I'm glad to hear that there's a commitment on that. 'Cause I don't know how the volume. Vest Mill is barely adequate. Yeah, so that's good to hear.
For clarification, that is Councilmember Mundy?
Correct.
All right. Any additional questions for staff? Thank you, Mr. Wilson. We do have opposition in this case. As a reminder, each side will have 12 minutes, and there will be no rebuttal period. Speaking as a proponent is Luke Dickey with Stimmel Associates. Luke, if you will give us your name and address and zip code for the record.
Chairman, members of the board, good afternoon. Name is Luke Dickey with Stimmel Associates, 601 North Trade Street, Suite 200, Winston-Salem, 27101. Let me switch over to my one and I'll let you, Brian, do it. So Brian did a great job of just kind of giving the overview of what we're proposing on this. We did bring this back in, and it was approved, I believe, in March of 2022. this spring for the western portion, which was 144 units, an RM12. This was the plan that was brought before you, illustrated plan of that, and we've highlighted the new section, which is the RS9 portion that we are bringing in at this point. So we decided to combine these together, bring it all the way back through the process for requesting RM12S, so we didn't have two separate RM12 zoning districts and have to do like a site plan amendment for the other site, so we can review this all at one time. Key highlights again of this is we are adding 2 buildings to the proposed plan. Those are highlighted in the yellow areas. We got that 2-story building there on the north side. And then we have 1 building positioned on this new 2.4 acre site. And then the original plan had 4 garages kind of run on that back property line. We've turned the corner and ran 2 of those garages so turned the corner. So we're basically adding 1 building and 2 garages with associated parking, common rec area, and the sewer lift station then on this new 2.4 acres. Overall, what that does is it increases us from 144 to 184 units. Density goes roughly from 10.84 units up to 11.71 units. We did look at the revising of the connection to Westbrook Drive. If I go back to the previous slide, you can see we had to kind of do a jog bend, the connect back up in the Westbrook, which actually moved that closer to that neighbor there on the south, so the road was almost on the property line for us to be able to make that connection. This allowed us, with this acquiring this property, then we can come straight in off the end of Westbrook as opposed to kind of do an odd jog in that area and make that alignment a little bit better. In this plan, then we're saving what trees we can up against that adjacent neighbor. We've marked that as tree safe area. Additionally, we have tree safe that is shown on the eastern portion of the boundary as well on the other side of the common recreation area and that in that location. We pulled basically kind of and we've been trying to work with the neighbors that had obviously some concerns with the added density, more traffic on this, just kind of, bring it closer to those in the Westbrook neighborhood. Our original plan had buildings actually pushed a little bit closer. We did not have that common recreation area in that location. We had a drive connection that came pretty close to Westbrook. So on this plan, we removed that. We tried to push all the buildings we possibly could as far to the west, away from Westbrook. And you can also see we relocated kind of 2 entrance drives. So we wanted 2 for accessibility for fire and emergency access into that overall parking lot. We shifted those further up the new Vest Mill extension. That way, any exiting traffic would be closer to Vest Mill as much as possible than as opposed to Westbrook. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't have people still go out Westbrook, but we're trying to make sure that most of the traffic we try to push up towards the northern portion of the site. There was a few minor modifications then on that western side because when we had aligned the drives, we made some changes to the clubhouse and kind of that area. But in general, everything on that side is roughly the same with pushing that density then as far as we could to the west. Overall, what we had, this is the kind of the notification area that we did. We had 67 property owners that were sent out letters. We've had multiple responses again, primarily from neighbors on the Westbrook side. The developer has met with them multiple times out on the site to kind of discuss the plans and try to answer the questions that we can. We know we can't appease, and address all the concerns for the concept of traffic, what this generates. The original approved plan, as you can see in your staff report, for the 144 units was basically 958 trips, if I remember correctly, that would be generated from that. This increases it then up to basically 1,200 trips. But if you also factor in if this was developed, this 2.4 acres into the RS9, that was another 105 trips. So it was just over 1,063 trips, I think is what it was. So we're adding basically an additional 160 trips for an additional 29 units to go on this site. So again, we just tried to do the best we could to move everything and shift it from Westbrook to address their concerns there. The request, again, is compatible with the adjacent residential and office development in the area. It provides for additional residential options in that area that has been slow to develop for those office uses, as mentioned before, and why we had approval for rezoning of that original acreage. Proposed plan provides connectivity and places those 2 dead-end streets, Vest Mill and Westbrook, and of course, meeting the UDO requirements for connectivity. We worked with the adjacent neighbors the best we could to modify the plans to reduce the impacts to them in that area. And again, staff recommends approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Mr. Dickey, you indicated a couple of times there was continued opposition. What was that regarding?
Just the thoughts of, again, the continued opposition to take action to Westbrook Drive. And then having that traffic, of course, that's generated, to be able to come through that neighborhood, which is a dead-end street right now. It's a very quiet residential neighborhood. Concerns about adding, more density of more apartments in the area. So going from the 144 units to 184 units, again, that just adds more people, but add more traffic with those concerns. And then, the original plans that we had that came through before what you're being proceeded to had some of those buildings shifted closer to that neighborhood. And so we tried to work to see how far we can push those distances away, as well as the driveway connection locations.
All right.
Mr. Dickey, are there any plans, or what are the developers' plans for the spur easement that goes north?
Yeah, there's no plans to show that. So we have to maintain that connection to those two lots that are in there, so that driveway would be. So basically, we're going to be cutting in for a force main. Since it is a force main and not gravity feed, we don't have to go as low as a depth to cut that in. So we try to minimize any impacts as much as possible to get that force main that would tie into the gravity sewer that's up in Vest Mill.
It's a gravel road now, is that what it is?
Yeah, it's a gravel drive.
Is there any potential of people using that?
No, we have not made any connection for that to come up to access the Vest Mill on that backside.
Any additional
And
questions?
just kind of a reference there. What we propose to do is just kind of maintain that as is, and that buffer would carry that buffer around to protect that resident to the north of us.
All right, any additional questions for Mr. Dickey? All right, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
How much time do we have remaining?
Mr. Chairman, there are 7 minutes left for the proponents.
All right, would anyone else like to speak in support? We have 7 minutes left. All right, seeing no one, we return to the opponents. It looks like 3 people have signed up. Cosetta Slamp, April Rowland, and David Rowland. If you would approach Ms. Slamp and who's ever speaking first. And you have a total of 12 minutes. If you state your name, address, and zip code for the record.
Hello, Cosetta Slamp, 1405 Westbrook Drive, Winston-Salem, 27103. And we are opposed to it. I appreciate this opportunity to be here and to show our public hearing on this. I sent an email to the committee, and I hope that everyone read it, and that's pretty much my bottom line. That's the way I feel. And I'm also here for my parents who actually own the property. But our biggest opposition is the connecting the Vest Mill Road to Westbrook, and that it has not been maintained, but it also is going to add 1,000 trips a day where we only have 4 or 5 trips a day now. So we just hope that we have the city's commitment to, if this is going to be approved, for it to be updated, kept updated, upgraded, however you want to put it. I also want to say, too, that this will not keep 2 dead-end roads. It's only 1, because Westbrook curves there, and there's still a dead-end road in front of 1405 and 1419. So there is still a dead-end road where it dead ends because when the new 40 came through. So I just want to make that note. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Slamp. Mr. Murphy, how much time?
10 and a half minutes.
All right.
Hello, I'm April Rowland. I am at 1380 Westbrook Drive. We built a business at 1362 Westbrook Drive. I'm going to read so that I'm sort of concise here, so I apologize for that, but I think it makes the most sense. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to express our thoughts. Having just rezoned land ourselves on Westbrook Drive, which is 1 parcel away from this project, we respect the process, and we come with opposition only after careful consideration. We have invested in an area on a street that has no access to sewer. The lines were not buried deep enough for a new line to connect with gravity feed, essentially the city's fault when installing. We paid a premium to develop there with an impact fee that the city levied back from the 80s that had to do with I-40 to the tune of $4,300 an acre, which is imposed on all of the land in that area. We expected the land around us to be developed commercially as laid out in the legacy plan. You veered off course with the previous rezoning to multifamily with an argument based on COVID that just can't be proven yet long-term. We were disappointed with that decision. Westbrook Drive is a small dead-end road with 4 houses, 1 small business, and vacant parcels scattered in between. Our entire street count per day probably averages 10 trips total. She said 4, she's right. 10 is a big number. I tried to be fair. Westbrook is not a major thoroughfare, does not connect to another major thoroughfare or other businesses besides ours. We're a recording studio, it's appointment only. We don't need to advertise with the traffic going by. It's simply a small street on a pocket of land surrounded by highway that has, in the words of the city, as I was told, been forgotten about. It has disintegrating edges. It is full of potholes and loose gravel. It is not necessary to connect Vestmill to Westbrook. It doesn't make anybody's trip any shorter to use Westbrook versus the Vestmill entrance. And there are plenty of private complexes in Winston-Salem of this size that have 1 entrance. I've looked all around the city. There are also much bigger major complexes that want gated privacy and have 1 entrance to the majority of their sections, 2 of which need all kinds of fire, which would be Arbor Acres and Salem Town. So there's not really a fair argument, in our opinion, to disrupt our quiet street so that this project can gain more convenience. We deserve consideration for once. In communicating with city staff, we were told the city thinks Westbrook Drive is important as a connector street to Vestmill for Winston-Salem as a whole, for city, connectivity. Why? We are a dead-end street that doesn't connect to anything important. I don't even think staff really knows the condition of the road, and thank you, Mr. Brian, for actually going out there and talking about the condition of the road, because I wasn't sure who had been out there and seen it. 2 cars can't pass on the road. It has been mentioned that commitment to improve the road is to happen after the development is finished. So what about the folks moving in? We can't pass cars, much less moving trucks, so that doesn't make sense in terms of timeline either. Just something to think about with that. So this is really about dumping traffic on us, and we simply don't want it. The city also expressed the importance and desire to create a public road exclusively through a private apartment complex. And considering the city can't maintain the roads it already has, Westbrook, for example, why would the city want to take on a road that should remain private in the hands of the complex? Taking on these small sections add up, and it's wasteful tax dollar spending. Most importantly, if it were so important to the city to control and maintain this additional roadway, why wasn't the city thinking to expand the proper infrastructure along that road, namely sewer? Again, on our little forgotten about road, we do not have access to sewer. Without access to sewer, Westbrook Drive is very unviable land in the grand scheme. So not only are we a septic tank island in the middle of the city with a disintegrating road, we are now going to be forced with an additional 1,000 plus, as Mr. Dickey pointed out, vehicle trips per day on our quiet street that averages about 10. Again, a big number, probably 4, like Ms. Lamp said, so that we can accommodate an apartment complex that already has an entrance and an exit. Again, look around town. I could name you right now lots of apartment complexes that have 1 entrance and exit. And if fire is the reason, why is Salem Town gated and has 1 main entrance, also Arbor Acres? We ask that you stop the road connection. It does not stop this project from happening. It actually saves tax dollars, and it keeps Mr. Carr's traffic from spilling everywhere unnecessarily. Again, there are many other complexes in this city that only have 1 exit and 1 entrance. And if you insist to connect Vestmill to Westbrook, where is sewer? We are asking that you don't abandon us yet again, this opportunity. When will we get the opportunity again if it doesn't happen now with this development here? This is an important moment for the city to do the right thing. We expect public sewer along the Vest Mill extension for the folks on Westbrook to connect into it into the future. Otherwise, you tie our hands, make our land hard or impossible to sell, and force a bunch of unwanted traffic that has nothing to do with us or our own development, further devaluing our properties. Please stop forgetting about Westbrook Drive. So thank you for that, and I appreciate the opportunity. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Ms. Rowland? Thank you.
4.5 minutes.
We have 4.5 minutes left. I think we have David Rowland.
I think you pretty much covered everything, but,
If you could come to the mic, please, sir. Thank you. State your name, address, and zip code for the record.
my name is David Rowland. I live at 1380 Westbrook Drive, 27103 in Winston-Salem. And my wife is April. Like I said, she's pretty much covered everything, I feel like. And we just really wish that you would consider our plight here with this development of this multifamily. Like she said, when we built and developed there, we were told by the city that this was all expected to go commercial, and never thought that there would be a multifamily there, adding 1,000 trips per day to our disintegrating road, like she said, and we have no sewer, and we're paying, city taxes, but we have a septic tank, and we're going to be considered a septic island after this all happens if we are not able to tie into sewer, and if you make this road connect to us. So.
Could I address Mr. Rowland?
Sure.
When being on the planning board for a while, I mean, I know we have certain abilities and we don't have other abilities. That's why I was very glad to hear that the city had committed to looking at the road in front of you. And it also sounds like the city's not doing anything about the sewer because the complex is building a lift station, if I'm understanding it correct. So the city's not going to do anything about the sewer for this development either, I'm assuming, Mr. Dickey. So talking to the city council is very important in this matter. That's where the group is that has control over both of those money factors that has to do with it. Because you do have a major problem with that road there. It isn't sufficient to do it. But I, for one, I do believe in connectivity, and I'm aware that even some of the things that were mentioned have emergency exits and things like that, because it's very important in those assisted living areas to have that. And they have these back doors that are in there. So it is I acknowledge that it's a big change to move from a legacy plan that says commercial to a legacy plan that says several hundred apartments. That is a shocker for you, I know.
Right.
Yeah.
And that, a year after we developed there, so it's happened pretty quickly. It's like,
Right.
And also, I'd like to point out, Councilman Mundy said that after the apartment building is finished, they will start repairing the road. And that'll really be too late, don't you think? I mean, the trips will already start happening. The cars will start trying to pass each other and everything long before it ever gets. And then whenever they do come out to repair it, that's going to disrupt that connectivity for no telling how long until the road gets finished. So actually should probably start at the same time if that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, there may be some questions that need to go to the developer on which access they're going to use to bring the heavy trucks in and
I know they said they
all
were
of
going to
that.
use Vest Mill.
Okay, well, that's progress, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, what I was going to say is, and again, I think the premise behind what the council member said, and again, I'm not trying to put words into his mouth. He's not here, and he can elaborate and speak to both the developer and the the opposition as well. But I think what they didn't want to do was go out there and make improvements at this point with the potential of it getting torn up. I mean, again, if they say they're going to bring it off Vest Mill, that's fine, that's great. I mean, I think that's where they should come in from a construction standpoint. But I think what they would try to do is get the timing of the improvements along Westbrook Drive to kind of sync up with when they would anticipate the apartment building being, the apartment project being constructed, and look to try to sync that up where they can make those improvements somewhat seamlessly. But again, I mean, there's not anything definitive related to this project as far as conditions of approval or anything else related to that. This is a commitment from the council member, and again, he's not here. But again, I would imagine that these same discussions will be had before the city council whenever this item goes to them next month, or whenever it does go. At this point, it's planned to go next month unless the planning board continues it or the developer continues it after this meeting.
Was staff's thinking on the connectivity with Westbrook driven by traffic connectivity or emergency services connectivity?
I mean, again, a little bit of both. I mean, you get back to the premise, again, you've got an existing Vest Mill that kind of terminates. You've got a Westbrook Plaza, that has a 90-degree turn that comes into here. When you kind of look at the overall project, one of the first things whenever this project came in is, for a sketch plan review, is we said, these roads need to be connected for efficient delivery of service, for, having multiple ways in and out, for fire. I mean, lots of things, just like, Brian pointed out on the slide and didn't get into the whole detail. The ordinance essentially says where practical and where you have, public streets, that multifamily should not impede the development of public streets, but should be developed in a way that continues the public street network. Some of the examples that were mentioned are, kind of pieces of property that are perhaps on the south side of a road that doesn't impede any other network because there aren't roads that stub into it. So you get kind of situations where you get, like a one-off or, perhaps two entrances into an apartment complex because it's not impeding, or it doesn't have the kind of the street network to kind of tie and weave it all together. In this particular instance, where this was situated, and when the project came in the door, that was one of the first comments that we said is, Vest Mill needs to be a public street and tie into Westbrook. It didn't come from the developer, it came from staff, and it was looking at the ordinance and looking at kind of the efficient delivery of service.
I'm just curious whether there's any possibility of connecting the two, but having it gated and only accessible for emergency vehicles.
Well, I mean, again, that's a potential, but, again, the connection decision was essentially made with the original rezoning as a public street. Now, obviously, they're coming back for an additional 2-point-something acres and add an additional 2 buildings and 40 units. But again, and I can't speak for what the developer would do, but again, if this were to go through and, be denied, the answer to that is not that nothing will happen. It's they would fall back on the approved plan they already have.
And just eliminate these two.
I mean, again, and again, when it gets to the council level, the council could make a decision, to go in a different direction. But, as we sit here today, it would be staff's position that you would not meet the UDO requirements if you basically gated this off.
Okay.
Could I ask, is there a way to keep the connectivity, but in design to connect that where the lift station is, to buffer it a little bit closer to that multifamily building and almost connect the parking lots to create another circular loop in there that might discourage people from going to Westbrook Drive if there's nothing to connect there to?
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you've got Vest Mill Road's connection. Could you create like a 90-degree, another little road that connects to the parking lot? If we, now that.
My concern would be that would increase people. Because right now, if you're coming from those parking lots where it says Easton Mill Court, you are more likely to be closer to Vest Mill and take that right and go out that way. If we curb it down, that kind of drops you off right by Westbrook, and you're more likely to just exit that way.
The one thing I do want to say is, I mean, keep in mind, we don't, and I don't know what the TIS said, we have, and I don't know if there was one, based on the number of units, there wasn't one. But if you have, a TIS, there's going to be a trip distribution. All 1,200 trips are not going to come out one way. So again, I don't know what that split would be. It really probably depends on where you're going and where you're coming from as far as the likely path of travel. So again, I just wanted to be clear, it's not 10 to 1,200, it's 10 to something between 10 and 1,200 trips per day. So again, it doesn't allay the concerns of going from 10 to something greater than 10, but this does not, the default is you're not going to have 1,200 trips a day going by here. It will be something less than that.
Okay, so, will the lift station be maintained by the developer, do you know, Chris? Okay.
It will be a private lift station that will pump into public sewer. But yes, it would be a private lift station.
I didn't know if it was then going to be taken over by utilities.
And again, I can't read, you never can read the crystal ball. Generally speaking, whenever it is on a private commercial piece of property, and again, multifamily is a type of residential, but it is a commercial property, generally speaking, that's maintained in perpetuity by the property owner. There are instances where private lift stations get installed for subdivisions, and once you reach a certain threshold, there have been times when the Utilities Commission have taken those over if they were constructed meeting Utility Commission standards. But generally speaking, whenever you do private lift stations, they're not built to public standards because the public standard has a larger wet well, it has different type of power, it has a different type of pump. So generally speaking, it will be maintained by the property owner.
Before we continue, do we have any more questions for Mr. Rowland?
We've kind of rolled into Q&A.
Yeah, we have. All right.
Standing there.
Thank you, Mr. Rowland. How much time is left?
Yeah, let me pull that up because it's still here. 3 minutes.
All right.
For
we
opposition.
have 3 minutes left for opposition. Is anyone else here opposed who would like to speak? All right, seeing no one, I don't think. Okay, I declare the public hearing closed. Now we can continue with the conversation. Ms. Marie, you were
I
about
was
to say
just
something.
curious, potentially, if it was built to city and county standards, that potentially the residents on Westbrook could petition for eventual connectivity there.
Well, and again, the issue is cost. The cost to building to city county utility standards versus a private standard is substantial. The other issue is, and again, I would have to defer to someone with Stemmel who actually looked at this as part of it, is, there are issues with topo for the properties that are out there being able to get into this without their own lift station or grinder pumps. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's...
Yeah, I think it's not flowing down. Like,
Yeah, to kind of help answer that question, we kind of looked at why we had to do the lift station. So our top two buildings on the northwest side actually can gravity feed to the existing sewer that is in Vest Mill. So we have that ability. All the rest have to then gravity feed down to this lift station at this point. Basically, where the Westbrook Drive, there's a sewer that's basically all the way up in basically the intersection of Westbrook Drive and Westbrook Plaza. And that is actually roughly at the same elevation of what we're tying into for those top two buildings. So anybody that's basically below that intersection of Westbrook Plaza can't tie into that sewer. That's why they had to go and they had to do their septic. Technically, that's running down to the low point down on our site. So sewer would run there. The question then goes with the county utilities is, would they want that to be public to serve, again, what is a multifamily development, and then 5 or so other additional lots. And then they'd have to get the easements, of course, to be able to get into that. As Chris had mentioned, the development of a public lift station is substantially larger from the standpoint, and this developer is also building a public road as part of this as well. So, if there could be something worked out in the future with the utilities that says, hey, city utilities cover the cost of the upgrade of the system, that might be something to do, but that's obviously outside of kind of the purview of the zoning at this point.
Thank you. Yeah, no, the public hearing is closed, I'm sorry.
I was just speaking to the technicality.
Yeah. So I think we have a decision to make here. I agree with Mr. Brian on this. Yeah, I agree with connectivity. However, I do see some issues that could be problematic. However, what is the pleasure of the board if there is no further discussion that we've not entertained from ourselves?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the planning board find that the request is consistent with the larger goals of the comprehensive plan.
Question, can that be reworded in that way?
Or else I give you an inconsistent.
Do we have to do that first, or is it only one?
Yeah,
vote?
because you are doing a rezone. And again, there is, just so you know, you found consistent the first time with this based on the fact, again, that we feel like there have been changing realities related to commercial development, and the fact we have not seen any new any new office development, any new office rezoning requests. We have a lot of area throughout the city that is recommended for office.
Yep.
That has consistently.
Yeah, I'll amend my motion. I move that the planning board find that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
We have a motion. Is there a second? It's a motion by Mr. Lamb,
Second.
second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Have one in opposition.
And, Mr. Chairman, I further move that the planning board recommend approval of W 3540.
Second.
Have a motion for approval and a second. Any discussion?
I'm in general in favor of this land being used for this because it really has been wasted along the way. I do hope the city council looks at some options for Westbrook, including what Mr. Grubbs was saying, maybe closing it off until they're ready to do something with it, which would certainly be an option that would provide some flexibility there. Thank you.
I would just like to support what George just said. There has got to be a way to remember the people that are being impacted and provide this to happen as well. So I would like to encourage the city to consider a commitment to Westbrook that meets its own standards rather than just improving what is there now. I would like to see someone from utilities reach out to the residents and see what, if anything, can be worked out rather than just hearing all this and hoping that it goes away, because it's not going away.
From a permitting standpoint, is there any way to prohibit the use of Westbrook for construction traffic? I mean, I don't think they're going to try to use it anyway. I think it's completely impractical, but if that helps address a concern that I think is a valid one.
And again, I can't speak for the developer, and again, if that's something that the planning board feels strongly about, perhaps they can go back and kind of look at that and, maybe proffer that as a condition of approval prior to it going to council. Again, I don't believe that they would want to use that. Obviously, as you start to tie in, there are some times that you probably will have to use it. But again, I think from a construction phase, they're going to stage and come in from Vest Mill. So again, without a condition of approval, there's not any way that we could do that unless there's something related to the driveway permit and those kind of things, which is outside of our purview.
Just to interject briefly, I think there was some mention of Winston-Salem DOT requiring a pre and post survey for Westbrook for construction. So I think they've kind of got their eye on any impacts for what's there, not necessarily what they're going to build.
Oh, what does that mean, Brian?
So if they were to, like, as Chris mentioned, they're probably going to want to use, again speculating, they're probably going to want to use the Vest Mill as the primary construction entrance, but as they get closer to the Westbrook side, they're more than likely going to have to use what's there. So Winston-Salem DOT is saying, for whatever is there, we're going to make sure that if you did impact it in any way, we need to know about it. So whatever is there for the road bed, et cetera, if they're going to impact that when they're constructing the intersection there for Vest Mill and Westbrook.
based upon your comments and Chris's comments, I think that would give the opposition heartburn because both of you have said that it's probably going to be used at some point. So I would encourage the opposition, Mrs. Slamp, Mrs. Rowland. You kind of heard some of the things that we've said. You know, go to City Council. They have the final say. Based upon what we can do, we're looking at land use, which sometimes gives us heartburn as well. I think there's a motion on the floor, but I don't know if it was ever seconded.
It was.
It was.
So we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye. Aye. Oppose the same sign. That is unanimous.
Mr. Chairman and Board, the next item on the agenda is item B7. And we'll hear from Mark Allred on that. Again, I just do want to remind the board, this is one of those things that is a final development plan approval that will end here. So if you approve this, this will not go to the elected body.
And Mr. Chairman, before we begin, I have a potential conflict. of
Yeah, I was
interest
getting
with
ready to
this.
say that you have to recuse yourself without objection. You may do that. The first meeting here, and you're leaving. You can go in the back and have some snacks, and someone will get you when we're ready.
There we go.
That was perfect timing, wasn't it?
All right, we're here to talk about W3452. The petitioner is Infill Delicate LLC. The site is 2.26 acres located on the west side of Old Greensville Road at its intersection with US 158 Reedsville Road. The request is a final development plan for uses of residential building duplex, single-family, multifamily, townhouse, and twin homes in a MUS two-phase zoning district. The site is located on the eastern edge of GMA2 urban neighborhoods. The property, so the entire phase is what you see right here. This is the first portion of the development. The portion that we're looking at is right here on the north, just the eastern corner of the property. The site has single-family residential homes on the southeast and the northeast and southwest portions of the property, and vacant lots and single-family residential across the street. The lot is a wooded lot. It's densely wooded that you see here. Joy Way cuts up through the middle. You have the house that's on the western side of Joy Way that's being proposed to be a duplex. The single-family house on the eastern side of Joy Way is proposed to stay as is, a single-family residential house. The western edge, when we go to the site plan, you'll see is very dense. This is the tree safe area in the buffer yard that's on the western side, and we'll talk about the rest of the site plan here in a little bit. This is looking east on the site, Joy Way. The intersection is right there in front of you, the concrete pad. This is looking north at 1418 Joy Way. This is the house that's proposed to be converted to a duplex. And this is looking north at 4015 Reedsville Road. This is the house that's on the east side of Joy Way that's proposed to remain as is. This is the eastern portion of the northeastern portion of the property line. You can see there's a natural tree area already there, but there is a gap between the utility poles and the tree line. And this is the property on the other side of it, 4023 Reedsville Road. The area plan just calls for this to be mixed-use development. The site plan, as discussed, Joy Way comes up through the middle. There's parking on both sides. The proposal is to have 8 duplexes on the western side of Joy Way and then 4 single-family homes on the eastern side. And again, we talked a little bit about the tree area side and the buffer yard here. There's also a 20-foot type 3 buffer yard on the eastern side, and then, of course, a 10-foot street trees that's in front of the parking lot. The request is consistent with the recommendations of the East Northeast Winston-Salem Area Plan, and Legacy has previously been zoned to MUS, Mixed Use Special. A majority of the site has been zoned MUS since 2004. So yeah, the request that's being asked, some of the other uses that are allowed on here are offices, services A, again, multifamily townhomes and churches, family group homes, schools, and life care community. What the petitioner is requesting, which is the duplexes and single-family homes, is a much lower intensity use, and we feel like that blends in better with the surrounding area. Because of that, staff does recommend approval. The site plan does meet UDO requirements.
Are there any questions for staff? All right, thank you. We do have opposition in this case, so we will have a public hearing. Again, each side will have 12 minutes to present your side. There will be no rebuttal period. In support, our proponent, we have Bryce Shearburn. Mr. Shearburn, if you will come up to the podium, state your name, address, and zip code for the record.
I'm Bryce Shearburn, P.O. Box 21674, Winston-Salem 27120. Good evening. I'm pleased to be here this evening with this proposal, and I think Mark ably and adequately detailed the current circumstance. It's a large site that I'm sure you're familiar with the history. It was SECU Commons. It was a well-intentioned mixed-use development that offered a lot of different uses that came unglued and sat fallow for years. We were able to acquire it for the purposes of redevelopment. We've been before you before with the change of use within the MUS zone with respect to the first phase of development, which was the existing campus buildings. They were mixed use, a medical clinic, apartments, conference center. We're converting the conference center into a daycare for family services, which will be finished in November. We have renovated 15 apartments and conveyed them to the Housing Authority to support affordable housing efforts. Our intentions for the remainder of the 15 acres, net about 12, will be development similar to this, moderate density residential. There are significant number of neighborhood site locations within the larger property, which will allow these to be sited as this is. It's a very moderate density development. And we will be continuing that effort over the course of many years. As you also know, NCDOT is now beginning their long delayed effort for that interchange reconfiguration. That will go on for 3 years, likely maybe more. We do not intend to be aggressively pursuing additional development on this site until we get a better sense of the timing of that and the potential impacts. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have regarding the proposed development, which, as Mark pointed out, is relatively straightforward, consistent with the legacy plan, the area plan. I think it meets UDO requirements as we've been through sketch plan and interdepartmental review and have made some tweaks and modifications during that process.
Are there any questions for Mr. Shearburn? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
How much time do we have left?
10 minutes and 15 seconds, but
All
I
right.
just reset it, so if I need to, I can go back to that.
All right, so we have 10 minutes roughly left, a little north of that. Would anyone here like to speak in favor of this case? All right, then we will move to the opposition. Again, you have 12 minutes. I have 4 signed up. I think this is Donald Sapp, Janet Sapp, Steve Sink, and Noni Sink. If you would again state your name, your address, and your zip code for the record before you speak.
Donald Sapp, 140 Churchland Drive, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 27101. I own 15 acres that joins this part of it. And our thing is, this place used to be Human Service Alliance. And we worked with those people, gave them right away to put sewer line in, and when they rezoned, let it go, fine. We thought they were great people. And now they sell it, and somebody can do whatever they want to with it, you know. But I have 15 acres too, and it runs down the side. Now this one little site here, it just barely touches me a little bit, but the rest of his land. What we're concerned is the camel getting his nose in the tent. You know what's going to happen. The camel's going to be in the tent. And if we let change and everything like this and adding, it won't be long. Our thinking is he'll be doing the same thing on down the road. And we've already got, we live in a community with, I think 13 houses on Churchland and Lakeland. And I own 15 acres and some of our people on there, we all know our neighbors. And they're going to build 51 houses on 10 acres at the end of Lakeland. I don't see nothing wrong with having less people in a packed area. We've got trees. Listen, I built a little cabin just so I can sit on the porch of it and look down there and watch deer. And my neighbors, I'm not going to do anything with the land. After I leave here, they'll probably put 100 houses in there. But hopefully, you know, we get a little breathing room. I'm old-fashioned, I guess. The land where he's got his used to be my wife's and their family, probably been there 200 years. All that land was. And we just got 15 acres left of it. But that's what we're worried about. You do this, it won't be long for it. It'll be another little section. Just do this. We change that. And I just think we're getting saturated in this area. And it always seems to be in our area, in this ward. You know, and we're a mixed road there. I mean, it's not just all white people. We're all mixed. We love each other. So that's what I'm worried about. And that's about all I've got to say, really. I appreciate y'all listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Sapp.
Could I ask him a question?
Yes, Mr. Sapp.
I'm trying to
Mr.
figure out.
Sapp, there's a question.
I'm trying to
for you.
figure out where your land is. Is it currently zoned single family? Is that the
Yes.
yellow to the north, sort of northeast? Okay.
Yeah, it's, I go down one side of his, on this plat here, which it doesn't show, but where it's yellow.
Yeah.
I don't know if you
Okay.
got that, and I ain't got it
Yeah.
here.
Thank you.
It's a little section of it. Up in that corner, but then it goes all the way down on his other property.
There you go.
Yeah. You can see where the yellow is, and the red line goes down there. My land goes all the way to Lakeland,
His property is the one that has the RS9 label on it.
RS9.
Yeah.
Which, we thought that was single family, and it had to be a nice lot. We found out that that's not so. You can put 50 houses, 51 houses on 10 acres. Oh, guess what? That's good zoning. You know, I thought zoning was to protect homeowners, but, you know, there's always a way around things, I guess. That's the way it is.
All right.
Any more questions?
Thank you.
8.5.
8.5 minutes left. I think we have Janet Sapp. If you state your name, address, and zip code for the record, please.
Yes, I'm Janet Sapp, 140 Churchland Drive, Winston-Salem, 27101. My husband touched on a lot of our concerns. One of my concerns that we've talked about, of course, our area is getting saturated with developments, and we are really concerned about that. Another concern is traffic. As we said, another development has passed that we opposed and is going in. So we got to contend with that traffic. I don't know if any of you ever tried to get out on 158 of a morning, but it's like saying a prayer and just take off and go. Honest to goodness, I'm not kidding. They are working on the new road, or going to work on it. But in the meantime, we've got all that, and then this new, the Commons area is going to add more traffic there. Atkins High School, my grandson goes there, and then there's Peachtree Elementary, and if you've ever had to take a kid to school, you wouldn't believe how long the line is. So, I mean, I'm not exaggerating about traffic, and I'm sure that the planning board, I hope, has observed how you get out there in the car and you count the number of cars that go by. It is really and truly unbelievable. I am real concerned about that. And another thing is, and I'm not that I'm against change. I know that I'm old, but I'm used to accepting change. But there's too much change to our area. And we have another group, Castleshire, that is across the creek from us, and they were going to come tonight. I'm here. Oh, hello. I forgot she was here. And so anyway, we are really banded together as a group. And we're just really sick and tired of the city treating us like dirt. And that's what we feel. I don't feel good about anything y'all do. So I'm royally ticked off. So you know where I stand. And I think you need to start thinking about people. Just think about people. Don't think about developers and how much tax the city's going to get from these developments. Think about people. That's what's wrong with this world right now. Nobody's thinking about anybody else but themselves. And we got to have heart. It's got to come back. If we don't get it, we're going to be destroyed. That's all I'm going to say.
How much time do we have left?
5:15.
5 minutes and 15 seconds left. We have Steve Sink, Noni Sink.
They're going to let me speak first.
All right.
If that's okay with you guys?
That's fine. If you will state your name, address, and zip code for the record, please.
Okay, good evening. My name is Jacqueline Toulon. I live at 3221 Shaftesbury Lane, 27105. The neighborhood that she is speaking about is called Castleshire Woods. And just to give you a brief history, in 1979, Castleshire Woods was about 90 lots on a half-acre lot, banded with the church-led individuals, and we sued the city, we sued the federal government, we sued HUD. The city attorney, Angela Carmen, last week was able to find that case. That case still exists. We have the file number, the case number, they found the case. And essentially the judge said, if you can split from one low-income housing project to another, that area is saturated. They were in Silver Chalice, which is behind Castleshire Woods. They were trying to build another Crystal Towers. This area of East Winston, like she said, they're white, I'm black. Most of the people in my neighborhood, when it was established in the 70s, they're black. New Walkertown Road was your middle class of your black community. Cameron Avenue was your middle class. Carver School Road was your middle class, some upper class. Those areas are declining. We have people who want to come out here and live in this area, and if you keep bringing low-income housing out here for the good of growth, to have affordable housing, you're displacing people who have built longevity there. I lived there with my father. I grew up here, okay? My family built a house in 1975. So we oppose This gentleman's expansion, we exposed him trying to put cottages. I don't want to come down my street and see a cottage at the end of the house. I understand low-income people need a place to stay, but I think this planning board can do a better job of figuring those areas out. Like I said, we have a case. We need to go back to the judge and pay more money to get this stopped. That's something that we'll have to do because we have the history on our side. We have a judgment. Kittering Heights projects, which you guys approved not too long ago, we opposed that. Councilman Burke has the petition from over 100 people in the area. This gentleman has been into our meetings sitting here at the corner. We oppose it and oppose Kittering Heights. We oppose this gentleman's project. And thank you for your time.
I'm sorry, could you spell your last name for the record?
Toulon.
Thank you, Ms. Lane. Thank you.
3 minutes.
3 minutes left. Would Mr. or Mrs. Sink like to speak in the last 3 minutes?
I think they've covered.
All right. All right. Would anyone else like to speak in opposition? There's still 3 minutes left. Okay, seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed. Any discussion or is there a pleasure coming from the board?
I move that the planning board recommend approval of W3452.
We have a motion by Ms. McRae. Is there a second?
Second.
Did I do that wrong?
It's not a recommend.
Oh,
It's just
Approval.
approve.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is the one that's just straight approval.
Yeah, this is
Oh.
just straight approval.
Oh, yeah, okay. It says recommend on my paper, sorry.
apologize.
So I move for approval. Sorry.
We have a motion for approval and a second
Still
from
second.
Ms. Smith. Is there any discussion?
Yep, it's 2.6 acres, is that what it ends up being? I mean, 2.6 units per acre, is that what your density ends up being?
Yeah, make sure I tell you
I think that's what was on the site plan. I
Yes,
believe.
I think you're right, correct.
Yeah, and is that all RS20 or RS9? What is all that yellow around there?
Or predominantly RS9.
Predominantly RS9, okay.
And all that purple area behind there is also eligible for similar development in the future, right?
It is, and if you, one of the things that makes it harder to develop north of the yellow area is that creek that you see there actually extends further south than that blue line is giving. If you look at the site plan for the entire development, it extends down. However, you do have expansion possibility where you see Felicity Lane. You see Felicity Lane where it's dead ending? Yeah, so on the other side, yeah. Yes. So to answer your question, yes, you could see more development on the property. Mr. Lamb?
Yes.
It's 1.77 dwelling units per acre.
What's the 2.6 on the site plan? What is
That's what
that?
I was looking
Oh, it's
at.
2.2, it's the acreage, I'm sorry.
2.26
Yeah.
acres.
I've got bifocals, but I don't have trifocals yet. I'm still working on that. So so the next expansion opportunity for residential would be to the northwest of this parcel? That's all?
That's where it is, where you're probably going to see it at.
Right. And interdepartmental review looked at this, and then I guess they had some kind of overlay for the circle, the traffic circle and all that stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of transportation, traffic changes in this area. Of course, on Joy Way, you can only take a right in, right out already.
Yeah.
But it's not going to change. But that road is not going to connect to Reedsville Road any longer. It's going to dead end, so that there's a lot of different traffic things that are going to go happen with like you say, the roundabout and stuff. But it's already just a right in, right out only. It's just now it's not going to have a connection to Reedsville. Well, now, in a few years, it's not going to have a connection to Reedsville Road directly. Does that answer your question?
It does. I just, I like, I certainly want to increase the housing stock. I want to increase the moderate, low-income housing stock. I like infill. I like a lot of things. But if it's going to end up being another 50 or 60 units right there at that traffic circle. And I wish that, maybe my concern about that is overblown or something, but it just seems like a tough spot right there for what's going to eventually be another 50 units of.
Well, I mean, again, and keep in mind from a traffic standpoint, that little spur road that runs in front of this piece of property, as my understanding, is going to be closed and is going to be cul-de-saced. The intersection with Old Greensboro Road and Linville, where it comes into Reidsville, that's actually going to be a super street. So you won't be able to cross over from Old Greensboro to Linville without taking a right, going down, doing a U-turn, and coming back. Similarly, if you're traveling on Reidsville towards Walkertown and you want to get on Old Greensboro, you'll have to go past, do a U-turn, and come back. So there's not a roundabout here per se. It's going to be a super street.
Okay.
So, from a traffic standpoint, you've got Reidsville, which obviously carries a lot of traffic, but there, this isn't going to be a through movement anymore. So it's going to be addressed through other means as opposed to traffic signals and roundabouts and those kind of things. It's going to be what's called a super street.
Okay. And where on this map, this one here, where is the subdivision that the opposition was referring to?
If you see Blaine Street, which is the
Excuse me, Ms. Arway, could you put that?
You need to see the other.
If you see Blaine Street right there on the image, to the right, to the left of the purple, to the west, you have Harvest Drive, and then you have Blaine Street. Where that cul-de-sac is on Blaine Street, that is where the PRD was approved by Planning Board back in July.
Okay.
That's where Kittering Heights, and again, it's a residential single-family RS9 PRD.
Okay.
So, and I did want to point out that, again, this piece of property has been zoned to MUS for a long period of time. This is a final development plan for uses that have already been established on this piece of property. The Kittering Heights RS9 PRD is under existing zoning, and there are, density and lots that are allowed under existing zoning, so there wasn't a rezoning action there. I did want to point out one final thing is that in relation to the Lake Park Housing Project federal court case from 1979. That information, again, was found by the city attorney in the federal archives. It's my understanding, I'm not sure where that came, but they did have to search for it. And that the findings, and this is from her email that was sent to Mr. Holmes on August 30th, that says the findings and judgment and order in the case appear to be limited to the specific HUD project that was at issue, the Lake Park Housing Project, and has no application beyond that specific project. The information has no application to this private project, Kittering Heights, and does not obviate the city's obligation to comply with the laws that have been enacted since that time, which deal with the fact that you cannot make zoning and land use decisions related to the affordability or the price point of what someone is going to occupy a dwelling at. So again, just want to make sure that for the record that I make sure that, that information that has been stated is not being ignored. Everything that is being proposed most recently, and in this case, have been under the existing zoning that's permitted on the respective properties. And again, the federal court case has no bearing.
I'm sorry, we've already closed the public hearing. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry, we've already closed the public hearing.
Churchland Drive, it's not off of.
I'm sorry, we've already closed the public hearing. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, the entrance is not off of Blaine Street, and I didn't ever say that it was. I was pointing out that's the piece of property to the north of Blaine Street where that is. The access to this comes in off of Churchland and Lakeland.
Right. Okay. All right, so we do have a motion for approval and a second on the floor. Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, I really want to look, when you look at what we have on our screens now, you see, I can identify with wanting your space and the heritage and that and your community not to be disrupted and interrupted. We're making these decisions. You look also at the overall patterns and what's already evolved. And with an RS9 in these areas, you look at the density that could be there. It's hard to say, well, you can't do a density that's less than that.
Right.
So that's my reason for
Yep.
seconding it.
All right, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor, sign of aye. Aye. Oppose the same sign. All right, that is unanimous.
Would someone please go get Salvador, please? Mr. Chairman, Board, the next case on the agenda is case B9, which is a text amendment for its UDO CC18 related to amending the UDO related to submittal requirements.
Good evening, Planning Board Chair and Planning Board members. The request before you, UDO CC18, petitioner today is Planning and Development Services staff. The request is to amend multiple sections of the UDO regarding procedures for submitting and reviewing applications within a digital format. In 2017, Planning and Development Services implemented a new permitting and site plan review software system. So we've been using this system since 2017. The UDO currently has multiple references detailing specific requirements regarding the submittal of paper site plans and paper plans in general for various approval processes. And this amendment would remove those requirements and replace them with more generic or broader language that could remain in place over time, even if the current software platform were to change or evolve in some way. The Planning and Development Services staff did review the UDO and located these areas with language that is specific for paper-based application submittals. We're proposing to replace that language that guides applicants through the current electronic plan submittal process. A total of 14 sections and 4 different chapters of the UDO have references that are proposed to be changed with this text amendment. One example of some of that language, in the past, we asked for 25 or some number of paper copies of the site plan map folded a specific way. It was cumbersome. It took up a lot of staff time. Papers can get lost. So the new system has worked really well for our customers and our petitioners. So the proposed language will direct our applicants to the appropriate process for submitting any digital plans as we are doing today. And staff is of the opinion that this text amendment will replace existing language with language that is broad enough to accommodate future modifications to the review process and better serve our petitioners. So we do recommend approval of this text amendment before you. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
And just to be clear, this is not making any change to process. We've been doing this for 5 years. This is really just going in on the back end and cleaning up what the ordinance says because it's erroneous.
Okay. Any questions for staff?
It's about time.
As sad as I know that y'all are to not have to deal with 25 paper copies of everything that's submitted.
It's folded 5 by 12 or whatever.
Yeah. As somebody who
With the title block showing.
Holding those things.
It was Tony.
What is, I think I hear the pleasure of the board, but what is the pleasure of the board?
Chairman, if I could you just ask for a public hearing? I don't think
Okay.
there's anyone here to speak on this.
Is there anyone here opposed? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone here opposed to this case?
Anyone?
Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the planning board find that the request is consistent with a comprehensive plan.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Okay, that is unanimous.
And Mr. Chairman, I further move that the planning board recommend approval of UDO CC18.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye, oppose the same sign. That is unanimous.
Mr. Chairman and Board, that concludes the, that portion of the agenda. If you would then call your attention to on page 4 of the agenda, I think. Election of a vice chair. If you will recall, our vice chair was Ms. Dunnigan, who is, has been replaced with Mr. Patino. Welcome to your first meeting. I appreciate you being here. So, Mr. Chairman, you can conduct the search since we're not also looking for your replacement.
All right, I'm sure Ms. Dunnigan is watching, so thank you again, and we will celebrate you very soon. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Jason Grubb as vice chair, if he'd be willing to serve.
Mr. Grubbs, would you be willing to serve?
Would.
All right. Any other nominations? All right. Would someone like to make a motion? I'm going to close the nominations with that said name. Is there a motion? We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second. All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Pose the same sign. Thank you, Mr. Grubbs.
Ms. Dunnigan left some big shoes to fill. I'm not sure I can provide the same level of diligence and thoughtfulness that's brought to the job, but I will certainly
Just like I'm not doing due
do my
diligence.
best. Do my best to fill those shoes.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting the service.
Thank you for continuing your service.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman now, and members of the board. That brings us to Section F, staff report. I do have a number of items, but I can go through them rather quick. None of them are very meaty. But again, I do want to welcome Salvador to the planning board. We didn't do that at the beginning, so I want to make sure to welcome you and appreciate your service. The next item I had under staff report is just a preview of your work session. We're going to continue our discussion on manufacturing C. Staff has Steve has been working on some of that information. We actually have a meeting next Monday afternoon to discuss that. So we'll be bringing that to your September work session. We'll also, and again, Kirk's not here. Kirk's on vacation this week, so there may be another item, but I know we are going to have a discussion on North Carolina General Statute 160D and NCOs that was requested. We'll have Jerry Contos there who can provide some context on that. We'll also, I believe, have Charles Hendrick there who can talk about small cell permitting within the right-of-way. And like I said, there may be another item that I'm not 100% familiar with. I'm not sure where Kirk keeps his list of items and the month they're supposed to be on, and I wasn't going to bother him on vacation. So there may be another item, but I know we'll have those three. The next item under staff report would be the October zoning case preview. We have 6 zoning cases in addition to the items that were continued today. One of which was the UDO text amendment, which was already on there. I'm not sure if those items that I counted earlier have already been accounted for on there or not, so it'd be 6 or 8 items. Okay, so those were already accounted for. Okay, so it's 6 total, 1 text amendment, 2 subdivisions, and 4 planning board reviews, and those planning board reviews, none of them are actually planned residential developments, so they're other types of planning board reviews. Amy Crum is here, and I'd like to offer congratulations to her. She is the new assistant planning director, and that became effective this week. The only other items that I have are we are going to be hosting the North Carolina Planning Conference in town next week, the 13th through the 16th. So a lot of staff will be involved with that, leading mobile tours, leading sessions, manning the kind of information booth, and welcoming our colleagues from around the state. So we'll be doing that. I do have 2 other things. One is something I need you to think about, but before that, just a bit of advance heads up. Preservation North Carolina Conference will be held here at the end of October. And the reason why I bring that up is Michelle McCullough on our staff will be presented with the Robert E. Stipe Professional Award, which is the highest award presented to North Carolina preservation officials in the state. And actually, she was nominated by, I believe, some folks, including some council members, for that award. So she will receive that award at their conference later on in October. Unfortunately, Walter's not here today, so I'm not going to get an answer from him. But, again, we need to get a photo of planning board. The last one we have, I believe, was from 2018, 2019, because Arnold is still in the photo. And so we, because COVID hit, and then once we came back from COVID, we knew that, we thought that Melinda's replacement would be appointed a little bit quicker than it was. So we held off and were hesitant to do a picture, just to have to do another picture a couple months later. So I wanted to see everyone's availability for October, get here perhaps at 4:15 and try to get a picture made that day. I can check with Walter separately. Does anyone know that they're not going to be here in October?
I will not be here the October work session, but I'll be here.
This will be the zoning meeting, which will be held on the 13th. Okay, thank you.
I will not be here. I will be in Maryland.
Okay. Okay, so but see, that's the problem we always have, is trying to find a time when we get 9 folks here, and obviously work session's already out.
You can already put my picture in. Is anyone good at Photoshop?
Let's start off.
We actually have done that before, believe it or not.
I'm going to start off my tenure as vice chair by missing the next work session, so that's out.
Jeez. All right, so how about November? I know that's pushing out, or we could come earlier, a different day. I know that could push everybody, but we've been trying to do
That would
this
probably be even more difficult to get folks here on a day they don't otherwise have to be there. I mean, again, I'll leave it up to the board. Again, we've got to get that picture made, or else we're going to be up against George goes off in February. I'm not sure if it'll take 6 or 7 months to get his replacement appointed, but.
His picture will be on there 2 additional years since. Yeah, so we're going to take this picture, and would anyone be opposed to coming another day? So we're not opposed.
Okay.
What day are we celebrating Melinda?
The October meeting.
October meeting, yeah. So how about if you and I go back and we'll look and we'll email everyone with 2 or 3 dates?
Okay.
Is there a day that's not good for anyone? Is there one day that's a day of the week that's just horrible?
Stay away from Mondays and Fridays.
Mondays and Fridays, so we're down to Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Anybody else? Okay, all right, we're good.
Okay. You and I will.
We'll get this out tomorrow.
We'll come up with something, we'll send something out, and then the only other thing I have to do is make sure I have someone here to take the picture. So I have to check with staff.
All right.
But that's no problem.
Okay.
And that's all I had under staff report, Mr. Chairman.
All right, before we adjourn, I do want to welcome again Mr. Patino officially. And if you don't mind, there are still people probably watching. Tell a little bit about yourself, and I'm sure people will inquire.
So my name is Salvador Patino. I live downtown. I moved to Winston-Salem 7 years ago and kind of fell in love with the place, and I'm really happy to be here serving.
Thank you very kindly. Is there anything else for the good of the order?
We'll have a motion to adjourn.
All right. So, Jenna, this is like this.